Welcome, Pam. We are so excited to have you here on our She Found Health Motherhood podcast and video. We are really happy that you've come to talk to us. And today we are going to chat about a couple of issues that a lot of young families face with their toddlers. So I often have patients coming in and talking to me about once their kids are able to climb out of the crib or get out of their bedroom, they just kind of keep coming in and out of the bed at night into their parents' room. So I was hoping you might be able to give us a few tips and tricks on how to manage that with our toddlers.
Absolutely. And it's just a delight to be on your podcast. Thank you so much for the invitation. I have been helping families for the past decade. It's my full-time career, passion, my calling, whatever you might want to refer to it. So it's a real honor and a pleasure to be here. And as far as this particular issue that your patients are talking to you about, I faced it personally. So how I got into this wonderful career of mine is I was a sleep-deprived mom ready to jump off the bridge and take the baby with me. It was that bad, and it was 13 years ago. And if I hadn't gotten professional help from a sleep consultant, I'm not sure I'd be standing here in front of you today. It was that bad. And I definitely wouldn't have gone on and had my second baby. I know that for sure. And my children are now 13 and 11, and they've heard this story now over and over again. And my daughter will pipe up and say, yeah, I wouldn't be here. And this darling little girl learned to sleep as a newborn. So week by week by week, she learned this vital life skill and beautiful gift. And when she was 2.5 years old, she all of a sudden started climbing out of her crib, refusing to nap, waking up in the night, screaming and hollering. And Dr. Power, I was just mortified. I was new in my business. It was about 1.5 to 2 years in. This hadn't happened with my son. He was a brilliant sleeper. He was a terrible sleeper prior to the professional help. And then afterwards, he was a dream. And he was a dream all through these toddler years. So even though I had been trained and researched and knew that these challenges could happen to parents, I'll have to admit that I chalked it up to inconsistent parenting and people not following my advice properly. Because I had clients already calling me back, and I'm like, this doesn't line up, right? And so at the time when my own daughter was doing this kind of behavior, I have to admit, I was so angry. I was so perplexed. I was so upset. And I actually said to my daughter, baby girl, if this got out in the local community, or on Facebook and Twitter, because those were the only two social media platforms at the time, Mama would be out of business. This is not good, girlfriend. But I'm really grateful to her because now, 11 years later, she's about to turn 12 in October, she gave me a great gift. She taught me that the most consistent parent and a child with the strongest sleep skills, because who's going to be more consistent than me, and who's going to have a child with stronger skills than my own, can have what I don't refer to as a regression, but as an age 2-3 test. So I've been there.
It's so interesting, though. It's so interesting how those struggles make us a better practitioner, though, isn't it?
Totally, right?
I do maternity care for a living, and until I actually went through it, I had that lived experience. I had no clue, but now that I've been there and done that, and I haven't gone through all of the struggles that all of the women that we care for have, but I have a much greater sense of the breadth of challenges that people have, and I can give much better advice to those women and their families.
Absolutely, right? So every person on my team, by the way, they're all past clients. So they've had to have had a child first. They've had to wrestle with sleep, and they've had to experience the transformation themselves from someone myself personally or somebody on my team, because that is just key, right? How can you walk in somebody else's shoes until you've been in them, really? So I'm very grateful to Madeline. She made me a much better sleep consultant for you because I had to try these methods that I was already giving to parents. So I got to test them. So, I got to test the baby method on my son. I got to test the newborn method on my daughter. And then I got to test the toddler strategies on my daughter as well. So, and within a week, she was back to sleeping peacefully all through the night, staying in her crib. And again, I'm grateful to the experience and the wisdom, because what a lot of clients would do and what a lot of parents would do is, if a child is climbing out of the crib, it's an automatic to think, oh my gosh, they need a big kid bed. But quite often that makes the situation worse rather than better, right? So I knew not to do that. I knew to teach her to stay happily in her crib again. And, for a lot of parents, when kids are climbing out of the crib in particular, safety is a primary concern. And I totally get that. So, I recommend to parents, if your child is doing that, don't jump to the big kid bed, because that's just rewarding the behavior rather than changing the behavior. It's just going to make matters worse. But if you're concerned about safety, get the mattress down on the floor, not to encourage the child to jump out more, but just from a safety standpoint. Tie down all the furniture in the room, like make sure that those dressers and everything is securely attached so they can't get furniture on top of them. And then what other clients have even done is taken apart the crib and made it like right on the floor, which makes it harder for the child to climb out. And one of the many reasons I recommend sleep sacks as babies, for sleeping, it's like this wearable blanket. It helps prevent this from happening down the road, because it's harder for a child like a 2-year-old or a 2.5-year-old to climb out of a crib in their sleep sack. So it helps keep them in, and I really don't like those, those cat tents that go over the crib. I don't like doing that to toddlers, to put this tent over the crib. There's a way where you can gracefully and lovingly teach your child to happily stay in the crib again. And for me, with my daughter, no, safety was not a concern. Oh, she was so graceful, like climbing out of her crib. That was not a concern of mine, but my concern was her sleep, because her sleep was obviously being disrupted. And to go from a child that had always slept brilliantly from a newborn to a child that was not sleeping properly, not only was it driving me crazy at night and at nap time and throughout the night, her behavior changed instantly during the day because of the broken and fragmented sleep. Like I think for a lot of parents, they chalk it up to personality and behavioral issues when they don't realize that a lot of it is sleep related, and they could have much happier and healthier children. Yeah. So this is a really common problem. It's not normal for your kid to be coming out of the bedroom multiple times. It's not normal for kids to be climbing out of their cribs multiple times. It's common, but it's not normal. And there's ways you can address the issues, right? So number one, if your child is still in a crib, make sure to use a sleep sack. And number two, don't jump into a big kid bed automatically, okay? And if that child, as soon as you're putting them in the crib, you see their little leg coming up, or they're trying to bend up and climb out, it's just a very firm but gentle no. And just start with that, okay? So do you want to talk about what to do when they're coming out of the room multiple times, Dr. Power, or where do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, you brought up a very important point of how important sleep is to our brain functioning and our ability to function the next day. And this is not only for children, but also for us as parents. And so I think a lot of people are moving into the direction of feeling the need to do the, and I'm going to say quotations, attachment parenting. Attachment is so important. It is one of the most important things that we can do with our children. But there's also a lot of importance in setting limits and guides and boundaries, and our children thrive on that. And so I feel like in our society, We're moving too far to the way of feeling like we need to do everything our children ask of us. And with sleep, I think that's even harder. If your toddler came up and asked you for a chocolate bar, you would say no, because it's not helpful. It's not healthy for them. But I think a lot of parents struggle with their children asking for their company in the middle of the night. And frankly, they're your best friend. Of course, they want to kind of come hang out with you in the middle of the night, but it's not healthy for them and it's not healthy for you if neither of you are getting a good night's sleep. So there's lots of different ways to sleep as a family, and whatever you choose, as long as it's working for you, in my point of view, is totally fine. But if you are having dysfunction because of it, your child's not sleeping, you're not sleeping, you're miserable during the day, you can't parent properly, you can't work properly, your child can't learn properly, then that's when we need some help. And so I would love if you could talk a little bit more about kind of a bit of a stepwise approach that parents could take if their children are climbing out of the crib, if what you've said isn't working, and coming to them in the middle of the night frequently. What are some kind of tangible steps that parents can kind of take to address that issue?
Great. Yeah, really great question. And for all of your viewers or listeners, they can download my 5 top tips right off my website for free. And so we'll go through, it gives it like a brief synopsis of what those 5 top tips are, but then they go into greater detail so that parents, if they want to, they can dive in even deeper. Plus, on top of that, there's a lot of free advice on my website. So if you can't find anything, just send us an email and we'll find it for you, because in the decade that I've been helping families, we've been writing lots of articles, blog posts, all that, Instagram posts. So it's definitely out there. It might not be easy to find. And if you can't find what you're looking for, just send us an email or a DM and we'd be happy to help. So for those families that are struggling with this particular issue and they're trying to get their kids to lovingly go to sleep every single night, the first step in all, in every sleep situation, whether you're a baby, adult, or a child, is setting up a proper sleep environment. And I think parents do recognize this now. So you want a cool and dark bedroom. And there's a lot of science around the research. And I could give you a ton of anecdotal evidence of kids, going from waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning until 7:30, just by simple steps in darkening and cooling the bedroom, right? Then in step number 2, as far as recognizing when to go to sleep. So you mentioned this already, Dr. Power, like it's really difficult. We feel this push and pull to do everything and be everything for our children and get them, like right now during this terrible time in history, we aren't feeling the pressure to get our kids to swimming lessons and fitness classes. Unfortunately, it's really difficult, right? But in typical society times, that's one of the pressures, is trying to fit everything in, especially for working parents that are getting home at 5. But you want to work with nature rather than against nature. So an early bedtime is still recommended because we all get a second wind around 8 o'clock. It's science that we get adrenaline and cortisol is re-released into our bodies, and it gives us adults a second wind and it gives children a second wind. And when you're a baby trying to fall asleep, you start crying. And parents often misinterpret it, as I did, that they're hungry or lonely or scared or teething or gassy, but that crying is really from an overtired child and they're having difficulty getting into sleep. And for a toddler and as school-age children, what ends up happening is they end up like being the Tasmanian devil. They get into overdrive and hyper state, right? Like they're actually really quite comical, and then they hit the wall. And so if you miss the window, so to speak, then that little person is going to be coming out of the room more and more saying, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that, right? Or having difficulty initiating sleep and also maintaining sleep, because when you go to bed overtired as a baby or a child, you have difficulty initiating sleep, but maintaining sleep all through the night, okay? And then with all of us, step number 3 is having a consistent routine. And I'm sure you talk about this with your families, Dr. Power, because it's really important to lovingly guide your child to sleep every night within a certain time frame. And even as adults, if we have like a really great night out with our girlfriends, we don't just come home and just pop ourselves into bed. We need this transition time, and it goes right down to the cellular level. It's really quite fascinating how these habits will signal our brains and our bodies that it's time to go to sleep. So you want to create a loving, simple, practical, and what makes me unique in the industry is a really fun routine. I like making things fun for these children because the more fun you make it, the more they'll want to go to bed. So when I'm working with 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, we're quite often doing wrestling matches, dance me parties, chase me games, jumping on the bed kind of activities. And it's not to wear these children out. It's to get them excited about going to bed every single night with their parents. And then this also bridges that gap on that wonderful question that you had about attachment. Because when you create this loving routine every single night, you get to attach to your child, right? Rather than be like, you got to go to bed, right? So it's like multifaceted, this bedtime routine. And so you can get samples of the routine online from our website as well in the top tips. And it should be about a 20, 30-minute routine. And it's really important for babies to do it step by step, ritualistic, in the same order every single night, because they're so young, right? And it just really helps them understand, okay, mom and dad do this every single night. And then when I go into that contraption over there, which we know is a crib, but they have no idea, that's where I go from A, awake, to B, asleep. And then with this age group, these toddlers and preschoolers, oh my goodness, it's so important to have very ritualistic, because these kids either want to test boundaries, like, can I, like they're little scientists, if I ask for 3 books tonight, will they give it to me? I'll see, right? You know, or if I say I'm hungry, will I get a snack? Right? And as parents, it's really hard because we want to meet the needs of our children. Like, I'm always worried that I'm screwing everything up, to be honest. Not in the sleep department, but you know, like I really, you know, I'm like, am I meeting their needs? Like, we just are so, you know, so worried about getting it right in today's society, you know, I think more than ever, right? So by having this very consistent routine with toddlers, it ends up reducing the bedtime battles. It makes it easier for them to go to bed, and they actually feel really smart. There's actually science and literature on this too, that, you know, those kids, like when you do things on a consistent basis, they know what to expect, they know what's coming, and then they feel smarter as a result. So if you need to shorten your bedtime routine, and it used to take 20 minutes, and it might have now takes an hour because your child has added all these extra equations. Like, one of my clients hired me and they said he has a 57-point game plan, Pam. Because it's 3 hours long, and they weren't making it up. It really was taking 3 hours to get this little guy to bed. So what we did is we did a very simple routine chart. And you can buy these off of Etsy. You can buy sample bedtime routine charts anywhere you like. But I like making it in a craft project, because when you sit down with your child in the afternoon and do it as a craft project, they feel like they own it, right? So Wyatt, this is your bedtime routine, and you put Wyatt up there, and you put like whatever he's really into. So I've had kids do Paw Patrol charts. I've had kids do Elmo charts. There was one dad that printed all these pictures of Elmo having a bath, brushing his teeth, right? Because his son was really into Elmo and he called him Momo, right? I've had parents take pictures of their kids do the routine and then put it on the chart, right? So then it's this visual reminder of what steps are necessary and what steps are fun, right? And, you know, what we do every single night before bed. And what gets really exciting is that when the grandparents come over, or the aunts and uncles come over, these toddlers and preschoolers get really proud of their charts. They're like, look what I did. And this is how we go to bed. So grandpa, first we do this, and now we do this, and now we do this. And they start leading the caregiver, whoever might be in charge that night for bedtime. And just so heartwarming. And the other thing that you can do for these stallers is like having the little stickers as they guide, go through the step. Or one little boy liked the bingo doppers. He liked doing bingo doppers all the way through. And so that will help this resistance, and it builds this attachment, and it creates this connection with the child so that they feel really well loved and supported, so that when you turn off the lights, they're less likely to come back out of the bedroom requesting things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it also even works with the crib climbers. So, I know the problem is happening once the child is in bed or throughout the night, but quite often the fix to the problem, you need to back it up to bedtime, right? And creating this really loving bond connection where these needs get met so that they're less likely to come out of the bedroom multiple times after the lights go off. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Yes. Okay, great. And then step number 4 of my 5 top sleep tips is that you got to recognize that it's a skill. And I don't know if you get into this so much with your patients, Dr. Power, but kids learn to eat. That's the first vital life skill. They got to figure out how to create that vacuum to collect the nourishment from the breast or the bottle, and wrap their mouth right around the nipple. That's the very first vital life skill that these tiny human beings learn, in my humble opinion. And then after that, like, oh my gosh, the learning just goes crazy, from rolling, crawling, walking, talking, all these skills that our children learn. Well, sleep is a behavior that can be learned, and it can also be unlearned. And I heard somebody speak at a pediatric sleep medicine conference in 2019, and I just loved how she positioned it that way. It's a behavior that can be learned, and it can also be unlearned. So what I mean by a skill is this ability to take yourself from an awake state to an asleep state all by yourself, right? And when I first heard of this as a new parent, I was like, what the bleep? If you don't eat, you die. If you don't sleep, you die. Why do you have to learn these things? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And the other thing that didn't make any sense is I struggled with sleep all my life. And it's actually one of the gazillion reasons that I'm so passionate about helping families out there, is because I'm trying to prevent people ending up like me. So I want them to learn this skill and learn it really, really, really well as a baby or a young child, so that they can live their best life possible and their families can have the best life possible. And so that these children don't grow up to be, insomniacs and having issues sleeping down the road as teenagers and adults. And it's a growing problem, unfortunately. The statistics are really alarming. We're getting less and less sleep, but I'm hoping more and more people will join my sleep revolution and teach their children this vital life skill and then honor it after that. So that's tip number 4. And then tip number 5 is having a solid game plan. And that's what we're getting in today, right? So part of the solid game plan in teaching a child this vital life skill for this particular age group is this bedtime routine chart. I love having these bedtime routine charts because it just does so many things to help smooth out bedtime and make things easier for the child and easier for the parents, okay? Then another tip that I love to use with this age group is something called the bedtime pass. And in the medical community, they often refer to this as like limit setting behaviors. And it's really quite common to use. So you might have heard of this before, but it's kind of like a potty pass. Like there's, like when you're in school, you put up your hand and the teacher gives you a pass to go to the bathroom and you got to bring the pass back. Same principle, right? So it's like, okay, Wyatt, I know that when the lights are out, sometimes you really need mom, or dad. I've noticed that you come out of your room and you either ask for another hug, or you might have a question from school today, like if it's like a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old, right? And you want to chat something everything out. Like you've been laying in your bed and you suddenly think of something. Who's been there? I've been there personally, right? Or what, you need to go to the bathroom. I'm trying to think of all the things that kids typically ask for, right? So if you're finding that your little person is coming out multiple times in the evening asking for a particular thing, this is a way to set the limit, right? It's like, okay, honey, here's your pass, and you can come out one time only, and then that's it until morning time. And then to go with the pass, I love using a clock of some sort. So there are a plethora of really cute toddler clocks that you can purchase for your child, and it really helps them understand that this is nighttime and this is wake up time. I got tons of toddler clock tips on the website, so I won't go over all the details unless you want me to, but it helps that with the pass with the clock is really helpful because, again, visual reminders, right? They're lying in their bed. Oh, I can come out one time only. Do I want to use my pass or should I save it for later, right? Should I save it for the middle of the night or should I use it now? And what's interesting, what I found in my 10 years of experience is when we introduce the pass with families, the ones that want to work with us one-on-one for personalized attention, most of the children use it every night at bedtime to start with, but it becomes a novelty. And then after that, it just kind of disappears and they just go to bed because they're having really great time with their loving bedtime routines. They're loving sleep. Their bodies are starting to love sleep. Their brains are starting to love sleep. And they're like, I don't need any of this extra attention anymore, right? So typically what I found in with families, it's used at bedtime. And once again, that little tester of mine, I needed the pass with her, not when she was 2.5, but a few years later. She was about 3 or 4 years old, and she'd wander out of her shared bedroom with her brother. This is when I was a single mom, when I became a single mom. And she'd come out in her little footed pajamas, and I would be trying to catch up on work because, Dr. Power, this is when I was all on my own, just soul sleep consultant, single mompreneur, trying to make the world a better place, do it all before I had a team. And my back would just oh, and I'd turn around because I could hear her feet. And every single night she'd say, Mom, I just wanted to tell you, you are the best mommy on this planet. And I just wanted to give you one more kiss and one more hug. And so part of me was like, oh my gosh, how adorable is she? Cutest little kid on this planet. But then the other half of me was like, oh, you manipulative little girl. Like, you really don't need to come out of your room. We make bedtime really fun. I like love and kisses. Like, you got tons of hugs and kisses. We went through all of that, right? But regardless, what I would do is collect the pass and go, okay, Maddie, you've used your pass. I love you, darling. And then I'd take her back to her shared bedroom. And half the time, Max would be asleep. That's my son. But if he wasn't, I'd be like, okay, this is your last kiss and your hug. This is your last kiss and a hug. And I'll see you in the morning. And they would, in their sing-song voices, go, okay, good night, right? And certainly, were there times that they tried to test those boundaries and get additional requests and additional hugs and kisses or come out of their bedrooms more than once? Well, certainly at first, but once I was consistent with my behavior, they became more consistent with their behavior. And I found that the pass was really instrumental with them. Yeah. And with other families. Yeah. So, and then another tip or strategy that parents can try, and it's called the boring game. Have you heard of this one, Dr. Power?
Nope.
No. So this is, let's say your child has already used the pass and they keep coming out over and over and over, or they've climbed out of the crib over and over, what do you do? Oh, well, this is really hard. you need the patience of Mother Teresa or whoever, but you really want to have zero reaction, because some children really feed into positive attention and some kids feed into negative attention, and any kind of attention is good attention, right? So when your child comes out of the room and they've already used the pass, you just gently guide them back to the room over and over again. No eye contact, no verbal cues, nothing. You just keep going back over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And if you catch this behavior early enough in the journey, like let's say it's the first night that your child has done this, then chances are you're going to be okay. You know, like the second night will get better and the third night will get better. But if you've been giving, like I call it the little gives, like giving in here and there, or laying down with their child in order for them to stay in their bed and go to sleep or go back to sleep, chances are you're going to get frustrated with this boring game and your child is not going to respond well, right? So if that, I encourage you to try it. But if after a few nights or a few days at nap time, or maybe give it a week maximum, you're getting no results, well, it's like anything in life, a professional is worthwhile, in my humble opinion, right? So, I could renovate my own kitchen with a lot of books, a lot of advice on internet, and watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos. But am I going to get the same outcomes as fast as I could by hiring a professional? No, right? So if after using my free advice, it doesn't mean that the free advice doesn't work. It just means that you have a unique situation and you've got a more challenging case, and, reaching out for professional advice, why not, right? And we offer a free initial sleep consultation so that you can ask your questions and feel us out and make sure that we're a good fit and see what kind of options are available. And most sleep consultants do that in the industry, is they usually have like a free consult where you can chat it out first before deciding to invest in somebody's services. Yeah.
Great. So how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, we're everywhere on social. So we're on Facebook and Instagram and all the social platforms. It's really easy to find us. It's just my first name, Pam. My last name is Nease, Nease, and then Sleep. And I am sorry for the uncreative name. I didn't, when the sleep consulting industry took off, I was so overwhelmed with business and with clients, I couldn't come up with a great name. So that's the name, Pam Nease Sleep. And I have a really amazing team. I've got the best job in the world because everybody on my team are all past clients, and they're as passionate about helping families as I am. And we're carving out a very different path in the sleep consulting industry, because I'm not about selling certifications. I'm about building a company, because I want to have I want clients to get a really quick fix, but long-term outcomes. So when their kids are 13, 14, 15, 20, 30, they can look back and go, wow, they still sleep. They still sleep. Yeah.
Great. So we will link your handles on our show notes, and we will also send the link to your 5 top tips sleep on our show notes as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. Those were great tips, I think, and they can be used in so many different situations. And I think sometimes we forget just to go back to the basics and really kind of solidify those basics before we start looking for these crazy wild tips.
Great.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.